Why did Trump leave China with almost nothing, yet call it a historic success? Welcome to America Daily. I want to talk to you about something that sounds completely backwards. Two of the most powerful men on Earth meet face to face after years of tension, trade wars, military pressure, and global uncertainty, and after days of negotiations, they walk away with almost no concrete deal anyone can clearly explain. No historic treaty. No massive breakthrough. No dramatic peace agreement. And yet, both sides act like something incredibly important just happened. Beat. Donald Trump leaves Beijing calling the relationship very strong. Xi Jinping treats him like an honored guest. Markets calm down. Global investors relax. News headlines start using words like stability and reset. So here's the puzzle. How can a summit achieve almost nothing, and still change the world? Think about that for a moment. Because on the surface, it makes no sense. We're talking about two superpowers that disagree on almost everything. Trade. Taiwan. Technology. Military power. Iran. Oil. The future of global leadership itself. And yet somehow, both countries walked away satisfied enough to avoid making things worse. Here's where it gets fascinating. The real purpose of this meeting may not have been to solve problems at all. It may have been something much stranger. To prevent the entire global system from becoming unstable. Beat. Because when America and China fight, the whole world shakes. Together, these two countries control over 40% of the global economy. Their trade relationship moves trillions of dollars every year. Factories, shipping routes, energy markets, stock markets, even your smartphone, all of it depends on these two giants staying functional together. And right now, the world is already under pressure. There's conflict involving Iran. Oil markets are nervous. Taiwan remains one of the most dangerous flashpoints on Earth. Global supply chains are fragile. Inflation is still haunting economies worldwide. So maybe the goal wasn't victory. Maybe the goal was simply survival. And once you understand that, this entire summit starts looking completely different. 1. The paradox setup. 2. Let's start with the contradiction. Normally, when world leaders hold major summits, we expect visible results. If two companies negotiate, they sign contracts. If two countries settle trade disputes, they announce agreements. If there's peace negotiation, you expect a ceasefire. That's how we measure success. But this meeting between Trump and Xi didn't work like that. Trump arrived in China promising major economic wins. His team talked about agricultural deals worth billions. Boeing jet purchases. Energy cooperation. Big announcements. And yet by the time he left Beijing, most of the details were still unclear. China didn't formally confirm many of the claims. No major structural disputes were resolved. Taiwan tensions? Still there. Trade rivalry? Still there. Technology competition? Worse than ever. So why did both sides keep smiling? Beat. Because the real achievement wasn't solving the conflict. It was proving the conflict could still be controlled. Think about how strange that is. In today's world, avoiding disaster is sometimes considered a massive success. And honestly, maybe it should be. Because relations between America and China had become dangerously unstable in recent years. Military ships operating near Taiwan. Trade wars hitting billions in goods. Restrictions on semiconductors. Accusations of spying. Sanctions. Political hostility. At several moments, experts openly worried about the possibility of a new Cold War. Then suddenly, during this summit, both leaders started speaking with warmth. Trump praised Xi repeatedly. Xi rolled out elaborate ceremonies. The tone softened. Not because they suddenly became friends, but because both countries may have realized something terrifying. A direct breakdown between America and China would damage everyone, including themselves. 2. The obvious answer, and why it's wrong. Now, the obvious explanation is simple. People look at the summit and say, well, Trump went there to make deals. That sounds reasonable. After all, politicians love announcing economic victories. Bigger exports. Bigger purchases. More jobs. And yes, there were discussions about agricultural sales, beef exports, Boeing airplanes, and energy cooperation. But here's where the simple explanation breaks down. Because if the meeting was mainly about trade deals, then why spend so much time discussing Iran, Taiwan, military stability, and geopolitical tensions? Why all the symbolic diplomacy? Why the grand ceremonies? Why the Temple of Heaven tour? Why the carefully choreographed respect? Beat. Here's the twist. This summit wasn't operating like a business negotiation. It was operating like crisis management between two nuclear superpowers. And that changes everything. Think about it like this. If two rival companies hate each other, they can stop doing business. But America and China can't simply walk away. The global economy is too interconnected. America depends on Chinese manufacturing. China depends on global trade access. Financial markets depend on stability between both countries. Even their rivalry is interconnected. That's the paradox. They compete fiercely, while also depending on each other for survival. And that means the real purpose of diplomacy changes. The goal is no longer winning. The goal becomes preventing escalation. Because when tensions rise between these two countries, oil prices move. Stock markets panic. Shipping costs rise. Investors get nervous. Entire economies react instantly. So the summit may have looked unproductive on paper. But psychologically, strategically, it may have been one of the most important stabilization efforts in years. 3. Layer by layer reveal. Layer 1, the theater of power. Here's where it gets fascinating. A huge part of this summit wasn't about policy. It was about optics. China understood something very important about Trump: he values symbolism, presentation, and visible respect. So Xi Jinping created an experience designed to send a message. Military bands. Flag-waving children. Formal ceremonies. Personal tours. Historic locations. Even China's vice president personally greeted Trump when he arrived. That might sound small, but in diplomacy, details matter enormously. Because every gesture communicates status. And China's message was clear. We respect America. We respect this relationship. And we are willing to stabilize things. Beat. But there was another audience watching too. The world. China wanted investors, governments, and markets to see calm instead of chaos. Because instability hurts China too. Think about that for a moment. Even rival powers sometimes cooperate emotionally before they cooperate politically. The performance itself becomes part of the strategy. And Trump responded exactly as China hoped. He praised Xi repeatedly. Called him smart and disciplined. Avoided public confrontation. Even during difficult topics like Taiwan, Trump showed unusual restraint. That alone told the world something important. Neither side wanted escalation right now. Layer 2, Iran and the limits of power. Now let's talk about the issue quietly hanging over the entire summit: Iran. At first, many analysts believed Trump would pressure Xi to help control Tehran. After all, China buys huge amounts of Iranian oil. They have diplomatic influence. They maintain close ties. So logically, China could help reduce tensions, right? Well, yes and no. Because here's the reality most people miss. Even powerful countries cannot fully control their allies. China can influence Iran. But it cannot simply command Iran. And Trump seemed to understand that. Instead of demanding dramatic action, the conversation shifted toward stability. Keeping oil flowing. Preventing escalation in the Strait of Hormuz. Avoiding regional collapse. Notice something strange? The expectations became smaller. Not solve the war. Not fix the Middle East. Just prevent things from spiraling. That tells you how dangerous the global situation really is. And it reveals the hidden logic behind the summit. America and China aren't trying to build perfect cooperation. They're trying to manage overlapping crises without triggering larger disasters. Layer 3, Taiwan, the silent red line. Now here comes the most dangerous issue of all. Taiwan. This was the moment where Xi Jinping became extremely direct. He essentially warned that Taiwan remains the most sensitive issue in US-China relations. And if handled incorrectly, the entire relationship could collapse. Beat. That wasn't casual diplomatic language. That was a warning. Because for China, Taiwan is not just another policy disagreement. It's tied to national identity, sovereignty, history, and political legitimacy. And for America? Supporting Taiwan has become deeply connected to regional strategy and global credibility. So both countries are trapped in another paradox. Neither side wants war. But neither side wants to appear weak. Which means diplomacy becomes a balancing act. Too much pressure creates escalation. Too much compromise creates political backlash. So what did both leaders do? They acknowledged the disagreement, and moved on. Think about how strange that is. One of the most dangerous geopolitical flashpoints on Earth was discussed briefly, then carefully avoided. Why? Because both sides may understand that the real danger isn't disagreement itself. It's losing control of the disagreement. Layer 4, the human story. Now let's bring this down to an ordinary person. Imagine a factory worker in Ohio. He hears politicians criticize China for taking American jobs. At the same time, his retirement fund owns stock in companies deeply connected to Chinese manufacturing and trade. His smartphone depends on Chinese supply chains. His grocery prices depend on global shipping costs. His pension depends on stable markets. So what does he actually want? Does he want America to beat China completely? Or does he want stability? Beat. That's the hidden human side of geopolitics. Millions of ordinary people are economically tied to relationships they politically distrust. An American farmer may dislike Chinese policies, while depending on Chinese purchases for survival. A Chinese factory owner may distrust American pressure, while relying on American consumers. The rivalry is real. But so is the dependence. And that's why summits like this matter even when nothing dramatic happens. Because stability itself has become valuable. 4. The mind shift conclusion. So here's the deeper truth hiding beneath this entire summit. We usually think power means domination. One country wins. Another country loses. One side forces the other side to submit. But modern global power doesn't work that way anymore. Because the world has become too interconnected. America and China are rivals. Competitors. Strategic opponents. And yet, they are also economically entangled in ways neither side can fully escape. That's the paradox at the center of this entire story. Beat. Trump didn't leave China with a giant historic agreement. But he may have left with something almost as important. Temporary stability. A pause. A recalibration. A signal to the world that the relationship, while tense, remains manageable. And in today's fragile geopolitical climate, that alone can move markets, calm investors, and reduce fear. Here's the twist most people miss. Sometimes diplomacy is successful precisely because nothing explodes. No crisis. No collapse. No escalation. Just enough trust to keep the system functioning. And once you understand that, you start seeing global politics differently. Not as a game where countries simply win or lose, but as a giant balancing act where stability itself becomes the prize. Beat. Because behind every handshake between world leaders, there are billions of ordinary lives connected to the outcome. Prices. Jobs. Retirement accounts. Energy costs. Peace itself. And suddenly, this strange summit between Trump and Xi doesn't look meaningless anymore. It looks like two rival superpowers quietly trying to stop the world from becoming even more unstable. Beat. Welcome to modern geopolitics, where sometimes the biggest victory is simply avoiding disaster. Thanks for watching America Daily. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest global stories and deep dive analysis. And tell me in the comments, do you think this summit was real diplomacy, or just political theater? I'll see you in the next video.